Our next reader this evening is Hanna Martine. How's that? Okay, good. I was given very specific instructions as to how I should pronounce it. Her debut paranormal romance novel, Liquid Lies, will be released from Berkeley sensation Penguin Publishing in August of next year. Her erotic romance has appeared in Clean Sheets magazine. Please give a warm welcome to Hanna Martine.
So I took a poll on Facebook and Twitter about what I should read tonight, whether or not I should do something from either of my upcoming two novels or my erotic short story that was inspired by Blue's Clues. Can you guess which one? Yeah, so I'm going to read my erotic short story based on Blue's Clues. And I'm sorry I can't read all the way to the end, and it's currently out on submission, and if it doesn't find a home, then I'll just put it on my website and you guys can read the end, because time constraints won't let me do it tonight. But it's called In the Doghouse. And my apologies if anybody's here on a first date. Confetti rained down. The director yelled cut. Interns quickly ushered the studio audience kids from the soundstage so they wouldn't witness the inevitable smackdown between Petunia the puppy and her lovable friend Jim. Brad didn't want to witness it either, and he was Jim. Mary ripped off Petunia's huge costume head and charged. Her graying hair was damp, her face red and swollen. Could you be a bigger ass? Thank God her role on the show was silent. Brad snapped off his polka-dotted suspenders and drew a deep breath before answering as calmly as possible. Let's try to be professional here. I'm sorry. Professional? You tripped me. The kids couldn't stop laughing. You delayed production. Everything was always about her. She was the showbiz veteran. There was a Petunia the puppy long before she found a suspended friend named Jim, and she never let him forget it. The show hadn't earned national attention until he'd been brought on, but he never reminded her of that. It was an accident, Mary. Yeah, right. She stomped off all 5 feet of her. The truth was, as his contract wound down, so did his enthusiasm. He'd gotten sloppy. He knew it, so did Coulson, the producer. Brad whirled, kicking aside balloons and confetti. As he shoved his way backstage, his arm snagged the corner of Petunia's doghouse. The rough plywood drew blood, and he hissed, willing himself not to scream at the rafters in frustration. In his dressing room, he collapsed into the black vinyl chair and stared up at the ceiling. The crack there had lengthened since last week. A production assistant popped his head in. Coulson wants to see you. On the dressing table, Brad's phone buzzed to life. See me, said Coulson's text. Then, over the soundstage intercom, Brad and Mary to the producer's office, ASAP. Nothing like a little overkill to remind him he wasn't the star when the cameras were off. Adam, the Springs intern, entered and slapped clipped pages onto the counter. Script change for tomorrow. Brad sighed. Of course there is. Hey, we still heading out tonight? Sure, meet you there at 9. Adam left, looking all giddy to be hitting a club with a television star, and Brad kicked the door shut. A new set of accusing eyes burned into him. What? He snapped at the packaged doll on the dressing table. Jim's face, his face, a plastic perma smile, the ever-present suspenders, all personality and genitalia carefully erased. With a hard slap, the box tumbled to the carpet. The back of it mocked him with a picture of Petunia, her felt tongue sticking out like a child's. He wondered what Greg Burkowski, his best high school bud, had thought when he'd first seen the doll. Greg had been the actor wannabe, and Brad had driven Greg down to Chicago for the Doghouse audition. Brad had only read for the Scouts to support his friend, to prove to Greg that he was better than at least one other guy there. After they'd driven home northwest on I-90 in mostly silence, Brad's callback hanging between them. 6 years ago, he never thought he'd won out. His first acting job, the star of his own show? Screaming fans, even if they were barely old enough to use the toilet? Kick-ass apartment overlooking the Hudson? Yes, please. Now he glared at the small stack of paper shoved partly behind the mirror. 3 more years up for his taking. Fuck. The groove he'd fallen into had mangled his soul. He wasn't going to snag any more acting gigs. He was Jim from In the Doghouse, period. And until recently, his paycheck had made that okay, but He didn't want to end up like the zookeepers, 3 40-something guys who've been singing the same damn animal songs for going on 30 years now. Coward. He didn't have to be an actor. He didn't even have to stay in New York. He could go back to school, reapply to the Miami of Ohio architecture program he'd been accepted to before moving to New York 1 month before classes began. But he was so damn comfortable and so damn weak. That night he met up with Adam at a club that used to be the hottest thing since hell, but had since mothballed its velvet rope. All Adam wanted to do was talk about the show and how exciting it was. Brad knocked back a few and let the alcohol do its thing, and soon he wandered off in search of people who hated their jobs as much as he did. Sweating whiskey glass raised above his head, he weaved through the crowd. A woman deliberately pressed against his side, tits bracketing his elbow. Softness, fullness. How could he not turn? "You're Jim," she said, "from in the Doghouse." No one his age ever recognized him. His show wasn't exactly the thing people in their mid-20s watched while recovering from their hangovers. Faint lines crossed her forehead and deeper ones radiated out from her eyes when she smiled. A low-cut dress revealed a sun-damaged chest. The press of bodies in the bar didn't allow him a head-to-toe look, but he guessed the dress was probably a little too short. He knew these women, these moms whose night on the town called for outfits they'd never wear in their day-to-day lives. They liked to have one drink too many and laugh loudly. They proudly wore their crazy, fun confidence. And he liked to watch them. He ran a hand through his hair and he watched her watch it. They usually commented on how different it looked without the slick of gel. Girls his age didn't notice at all. "It's Brad, actually." "Brad, huh?" She quirked her head to the side, dark hair swaying in shiny layers. "I like it. You're taller than I thought you'd be." "How about that? Usually people tell me I look shorter." She shrugged, a faint line of muscle appearing in her upper arms. "I'm not exactly a giant." The crowd eased a bit, and he snuck a glance at her body. She was a tiny little rocket ship balancing on 3-inch heels, and yeah, her dress was a little too short, but he wasn't complaining. Her legs looked strong, covered with that layer of softness that age so lovingly slathered on. He was strangely drawn to that place where her knees came together. He imagined sliding his hands between them, pushing them apart. Usually about now, women would whip out their camera phones and click a picture, giggle, send it back home to their friends. Then they'd leave and he would try to talk up a recent college grad who would laugh uncomfortably when he told them he hosted a show for preschoolers. "I'm Kara." She had a firm handshake, one that said she knew how to handle people. She held on longer than necessary, her fingers dragging leisurely through his. He knew what that meant, too. She smiled mischievously out of one side of her mouth, a pale crescent marking her skin at its corner. "How old are your kids?" "No use beating around the bush." Kara smiled lovingly, but there was strain behind it. 6 and 7 now. We used to watch you when you first came on, every morning during breakfast. No, not so much. You should give us another shot. Storylines are edgier. She laughed, head thrown back so her hair swished over her shoulders. The sight of it did something to his dick. It was a sign he should walk away. He never knew what women weren't saying, but they were left at home that night. A popular kid show host breaking up a marriage. He hated his job, true, but the last thing he wanted was to be splashed across the internet. Greg Burkowski would probably get a kick out of that. "It's crowded here." She crept closer. He carefully retreated. She looked right into his eyes. "I'm not married. I dumped the asshole after he drove to Vegas on another guy's trip, leaving me in the middle of bumfuck Iowa with a 1-year-old and a baby, no money, no car." He blinked, the last gulp of Glenfiddich going down hard. "Wow, you're really direct. And you're really, really cute." The eye roll came involuntarily. His feet took the cue to walk away. "Wait, sorry." Her fingers wrapped gently around his forearm, bare since he'd rolled up his sleeves. The scratch the Doghouse had given him earlier stung. The sensation of her hand, chilled from holding her cocktail glass, lasered straight to his crotch. "Bad word?" "Kinda." She hissed through her teeth, looking sheepish and very, very hot. Again, sorry. What was it about this woman? "So, you live in New York now, or..." "Oh, visiting a high school friend and her husband." She gestured to a couple sitting at a table near the door. "First time here." "First time anywhere, really. I actually gave myself a few days off. The kids are with a neighbor, and here I am." "Gave yourself?" "I manage a small chain of teen clothing stores. I started out behind the register when I was 16. She sipped the last of her drink and muttered, "Didn't really have another choice." That explained the dress. He didn't mind. Not at all. Where's home then? Still Iowa. A curtain fell across her face, and it was the color of disappointment and shame. He gave her a reassuring elbow nudge and leaned closer. Her faint perfume cut through the beer and vodka smell of the bar. Yeah, there's a Midwestern look about you. She wrinkled her nose. I deserve that for calling you cute. Nah. Recognize one of my own. Across Wisconsin. Get out, really? That's only a 2-hour drive from me. It settled something between them. They talked about home for a bit, her descriptions of isolated towns and slow days, lodging a hard rock in his chest. Around midnight, when the small town comparisons thinned, she bit her bottom lip, wearing away a small line of burgundy lipstick. Do you want to take me home? Is that what you want? One hand rose to her forehead, an exasperated mom. Just tell me what you want me to do, Brad. What? You sounded like an idiot. A young idiot. Look, I know I came up to you, but can I be totally honest? I'd hoped you'd take the reins. When he just blinked, her hand clenched into a fist. If I have to make one more decision, tell one more stupid employee what to do, correct one more mistake, break up one more kid fight, or tie one more goddamn shoelace, I'm going to scream. He went utterly still. Did she truly offer what he hoped? What he needed? He took a chance, slid a firm hand behind her neck, and bent close to her ear. Get your coat. Her body stiffened, then melted under his fingers. The skin underneath her heavy hair turned hot and pliant. Anything you say, it muttered. As he pulled her to the door, the local friend grabbed Kara's arm. Where on earth are you going? Kara looked at her wordlessly, then lowered her eyes to the sticky floor. She edged ever so slightly toward Brad. She'll be fine, he said. She's with me. Kara gave him a diamond smile. They burst out onto the street. Excitement and relief shimmered around her, and he cloaked himself in it. It had started to rain, the Soho cobblestones glistening with black dots. Kara belted her trench coat, trapping her hair against her neck. The sleek, dark oval around her face made her blue eyes blaze. Take your hair out, he said. With one hand, she freed it, twisting a thick, dark line down the front of the tan coat. He reached out and fingered the ends of her hair. Underneath the brown strands in the trench coat were freckles he was dying to see again. The rain fell harder, big, fat drops that sounded like footsteps. Close your eyes, he said. Her eyes turned misty, then she did as he ordered. Tilt your head back a bit. Yeah. Now open your mouth. The rain dripped into her eyeshadow, making a silver trail from her nose to her ear. The water splashed her lips, her tongue flicked out to catch the drops, and he watched the liquid sink into the moist pink opening. She swallowed, her throat working, then opened her mouth for more. He lunged for the curb to get a cab. They said nothing during the short ride to the village. He sensed her sneaking sideways glances awaiting his cue, but he didn't want words. He wasn't sure what he wanted to do with her. He was like one of those kids he saw every day, those toddlers who begged their moms to take them to see their favorite show, and then when they got there, they were all so excited all they did was either run around in circles or stare at him like a statue. The options were endless. He couldn't concentrate. All his fantasies played like a movie and fast forward. In his dark apartment overlooking the Hudson, he told her to take off her coat. Kara slid it from her shoulders. No shrugging, no tugging, just a smooth removal. She breathed quickly, stared at him with her mouth slightly open. God, he wanted to kiss her. Suddenly, he knew exactly what he wanted. The thought of it made him bone hard, shamed him a little. Put your coat in the guest bedroom. First door on the right. She turned, her ass swayed, her heels clicked on the parquet floor. She had great calves. He followed, predatory and silent, 3 steps behind. She opened the guest bedroom door and gasped, coat dropping to the floor. She whirled back to him, one manicured hand pressed to her grin, eyes incredibly wide. Is that? Yeah. He'd allow a departure from their little game, a short one. From the first season. Network wanted a different style of Petunia's Doghouse for the second season, so producers gave me the old one. Wow, very cool. Was it? He never came in here. Had deliberately forgotten the existence of the garishly colored, jauntily constructed doghouse until Kara had entered his apartment. Like so much else in his life, he pushed it aside. She faced him and lifted her chin like an obedient little dog waiting for the treat. Game on. He raised his rain-streaked arms and braced them on either side of the doorway, encasing her. Her perfume stroked him with invisible fingers. Hands still clenching the door jamb, he bent down and rubbed his cheek against hers. His tongue found her ear, licked around it. She whimpered. He craved her thighs around his hips. He'd always fantasized about having sex on set. A twisted scenario he'd never told anyone. At least here, no one would catch him. Kara, he said, get in.
Great stuff. Did anyone ever hear the episode of the Moth podcast with Steve from Blue's Clues?
Yes.
His date with the Playboy Playmate did not go anywhere near that well. We're going to take a break now for about 10 or 15 minutes. Visit John at the bar, get some beer, talk to your neighbors, and we'll be back for the second half of the show soon.